Bonjour, good morning. We are not here today for a routine policy discussion. We're here because the lines of human rights, national security, and trade enforcement have collapsed, and Canada is now standing at that intersection. Transnational repression is not a distant threat. It is active, it is deliberate, and it is reaching into every democratic country, including Canada. Targeting communities, silencing voices, and shaping outcomes far beyond the borders of the regimes that deploy it. At the same time, forced labor is not an abstract allegation buried deep in supply chains, in a system, industrial organized, and in some cases, state-directed. And its products are moving through global markets, including our own. It is being documented and reported on by internationally recognized organizations, including the United Nations, who declared what was taking place in Xinjiang or East Turkestan, they were crimes against humanity. This is where our obligations come into focus. Under USMCA, Canada has a clear commitment with goods produced with forced labor are not to enter this continent, not into the United States, not into Mexico, and certainly not into Canada. The United States has enforced this through the Uyghur Forced Labor Prevention Act. Canada has not kept pace. In 2025, the Congressional Executive Committee on China issued a direct warning to then Minister Mary Ng that Canada risked becoming a backdoor in North America for goods tainted with forced labor. The warning now sits squarely in front of us. This is not just a policy gap, it's a credibility gap. It raises the fundamental question: will Canada enforce the standards it has signed on to, or will become the weak link in a system that depends on integrity? That is why we have brought together a group of voices today who are not speaking in theory, but from direct experience. First, I want to introduce Garnett Genuis, who has been a consistent and principled voice in Parliament on human rights, supply chains, and Canada's responsibility to act. He will be followed by author and Rushan Abbas, who is also head of the Campaign for Uyghurs in the United States, whose advocacy is grounded in both personal loss and relentless work to expose the reality of what is happening to the Uyghur people. We'll then hear from Namgyal Choedup, representing the Central Tibetan Administration, His Holiness the Dalai Lama, bringing the perspective of the people who have lived under sustained repression since 1949. And we will close with Mehmet Tohti of the Uyghur Rights Advocacy Project, who has been at the forefront of pushing for accountability here in Canada and moving with parliamentarians to bring new acts, new motions that secure the rights of Uyghurs and all Chinese diaspora communities in the country. Now, these are not disconnected stories. They're part of the same system, a system that uses economic integration as leverage, that exports repression alongside goods, and tests whether democracies are willing to enforce their own rules. When Michael Ma questioned Margaret McQuaig Johnson at committee, asking, "Have you ever seen forced labor with your own eyes?" he attempted to deflect and then set up a narrative for some moral equivalency and hypocrisy in the House of Commons. There is forced labor everywhere. Really? But we are now trying to enter into a strategic partnership with the very country, and it may be the devil we know. Today's press conference is about answering the test as to whether Canada will stand with a criminal repressive state while we turn a blind eye and never push back, while turning our back on our biggest security partner, ally, and a country that accounts for 76% of our GDP versus China at 3.6%. Thank you, and I give you Garnett Genuis.
Thank you. It's a pleasure for me to be here and to help facilitate this important press conference happening, highlighting issues of human rights, transnational repression, and forced labor. I'll be brief. I want to give the most time possible to our esteemed guests from off the Hill. But I want to just highlight that it seems today that that some people want to oppose our moral obligations with our economic interests when it comes to issues like forced labor and transnational repression. But doing the morally right thing on these issues is also very much in our economic interests. No human being should be forced to work against their will, and no Canadian company should be forced to compete with foreign companies that are making products with forced labor. Transnational repression threatens our security, threatens the well-being of Canadians, and it also threatens our economic security, as transnational repression includes the theft of intellectual property and other threats that harm our economic development. So defending our economic interests and adhering to our moral obligations to defend the dignity of the human person wherever they live. These two things align in pointing us to the importance of defending human rights, of combating forced labor effectively, and of combating transnational repression. So I look forward to hearing from our guests, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to share some thoughts this morning.
Good morning, everyone. I speak to you today as a direct victim to the Chinese government's human rights abuses and appeal to the Canadian government to address transnational repression and the Uyghur forced labor. Today, the New York Times just published an investigative report that the Campaign for Uyghurs helped bring to light. It found that widely popular Lollywood dolls are tainted with Uyghur forced labor. These dolls are sold across Canada and all over the world. They are in Canadian homes, on the shelves, and collected by Canadian youth. These dolls contain cotton handpicked by Uyghur slaves. Currently, the Chinese Communist Party operates systematic state-imposed forced labor in the Uyghur region. It recognized by the International Labor Organization. The Uyghur region produces 20% of the world's cotton, 15% of the world's tomato paste, and 10% of the world's aluminum and the PVC. Forced labor is embedded in garments, electric vehicles, and agricultural products and electronics. The exports from the Uyghur region to Canada jumped 120% to over $600 million in 2025. In the same period, Canada's border agency blocked only 2 shipments on grounds of forced labor. Now, Chinese-made electric vehicles also linked to Uyghur forced labor are expected to enter the Canadian market. Just last week, the Victims of Communism Memorial Foundation published a testimony from Zhang Yabo, a former police officer in the Uyghur region. His unprecedented insider account details the torture of detainees and the supervising forced labor transfers against the people's wish to cotton fields and the other forced labor facilities with armed guards. Reports show that 3.4 million Uyghurs forced to transfer in 2025 alone. This isn't history, it's happening now on everyone's watch. And those forced labor products are entering Canadian market. As Uyghurs, we speak out about these crimes. We are punished by the Chinese Communist Party in an act of transnational repression. My sister, Dr. Gulshan Abbas, disappeared from her home in Urumqi only 6 days after my first public speech. In September 2018, I attended a public panel at Hudson Institute in Washington, D.C., describing and exposing China's mass detention and the genocidal policies, outlining the fate of my in-laws. 24 members of my husband's family went missing. When I spoke that, as an American citizen, they took her as a hostage. Now it's almost 8 years. She's still in jail. Uyghur Canadians live with the same reality every day. Their families back home are used as leverage to keep them silent. A phone call, a social media post, or an appearance at the conferences like this, or any China-related, Uyghur-related events or protests that will result a family member missing. The Chinese government is effectively weaponizing our love for our families, our relationships back home against us to keep us silent, because silence is an oxygen for the tyranny, and that they try to survive with silence of the world. Canada was among the first countries to recognize Uyghur genocide and to offer refugee to Uyghurs fleeing persecution, with wonderful parliamentarian members like Honorable Garnett and many others. We are very thankful for them. Today, we stand at the critical moment. Canada must ensure its markets are not linked to forced labor, to protect its citizens from transnational repression, and to safeguard its national security from the foreign interference that seeks to extend coercion beyond borders. Canada has a reputation for its commitment for human rights, justice, and democracy. We ask Canada to continue to stand strong against the perpetrators of an ongoing genocide and to ensure that its principles are reflected not only in its words, but its actions. Because if we don't hold the Chinese Communist Party accountable now, it will be our children and the grandchildren who will pay the consequences of an illiberal world. We are all responsible for what happens next. Thank you.
Tashidalek, bonjour, good morning. For those who don't know me, my name is Namgyal Choedup. I'm privileged to serve as the representative of His Holiness the Dalai Lama and the Central Tibetan Administration to North America. Today, I'm here to show solidarity with my Uyghur brothers and sisters and with Rushan, who's a good friend and ally, whose stories is an inspiration for all the suppressed people. And today, I'm here to remind the Canadian people that injustices anywhere is justice, injustice everywhere. And in that sense, we are all in this together. And whether we like it or not, we live in a deeply interconnected and interdependent world. And I would like to quote something Rushan said yesterday at the book launch. Silence is the oxygen that dictators and the authoritarian regime feeds on. So it's really important that we need to speak. We can't afford to be indifferent or inactive, and standing up for those values, those rule of law, basic human dignity is really important. So therefore, I would like to say that Canada is in a unique position to speak up and to work with like-minded countries to call out Beijing for its violation of basic human rights, and some of those laws it is signatory to. So we live in an interdependent world, and it's really critical that people living in the free world call out Beijing. Otherwise, dictators and bullies thrive on our silence, inaction, our indifference. So thank you.
Thank you. Bonjour. Good morning. My name is Mehmet, the Executive Director of Uyghur Rights Advocacy Project based in Ottawa. I would like to briefly talk about two things. One is transnational repression that is already on public discussion since a number of years in Canada. We had the public inquiry on foreign interference and the transnational repression. And we highlighted recently the case of Hussein Jalil, Canadian citizen, lost in contact communication since almost 20 years without having a single consular access or a single phone conversation with his four Canadian-born children and the family. At the same time, as my dear friend Rushan mentioned, the forced labor is another discussion that we are having right now, and we should be having right now with concrete action from the government. Forced labor, Uyghur forced labor, transnational repression is twin tool of Chinese Communist Party.
weaponizing to persecute Uyghurs at home and abroad. And we have Uyghur Canadians living in that consequence every day with insecurity and a feeling of fear in this free country. And for that reason, we have a long discussion, but at the same time, this is the time to act. And we have some bills already passed, just like C-70, and an independent commissioner recommended to amend a number of bills, and we should be completing that amendment as soon as possible. And most importantly, for forced labor side, and we have some bills, as Prime Minister said, but it is not robust mechanism. And the result tells the story, volume tells the story. In compared to United States, our border service agencies only detained 50 shipments and arrested only 2, and the remaining 48 shipments already released. That tells the story. And we have a problem in our implementation and enforcement, and we have loopholes in our legislation, and for that reason we have to amend, or we have to introduce a new bill. And we know that Government of Canada and the previous government already prepared the drafted 2 bills. One is import ban legislation, another one is human rights due diligence law in supply chain. And after this new government, that previous drafted bills already off the shelf, and we need to bring it back, or we have to introduce, or a government should introduce new government table bill. And I think that there is a great consensus in our parliament, and we have to pass it. And we cannot ignore. And we cannot ignore that things will go away. And forced labor is going to be on the CUSMA review process. And electric vehicle discussion. Forced labor is everywhere. And for that reason, we cannot just get away by closing our eyes to the reality. We have to act, and we have to act now. Thank you.
So that ends the press conference. If there are any other questions by the press, please feel free to ask us. One thing I will say again, unified together, we stand for a common front, for a united front for freedom and democracy. Parliamentarians here are doing their job, but they need to come together, work with advocacy groups to ensure that humanity, dignity, free speech, and democracy is preserved. So thank you very much.
We have no reporters, so that will end the press conference. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's how important.